Something Unova related may be coming next year, and if it isn't just generic Unova remakes, Glistening Black and Sparkling White, anyone, then let's talk about what if it's everyone's next big guess, a Legends game. Welcome back to the Lumiose Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, and today we're going to be talking about a hypothetical Legends Kyurem, or just Unova-based Legends game. I'm going with Legends Kyurem for this one, that could be coming out in 2024. Now, for the record, I don't think that it's going to be a Legends game coming out in 2024. Even if these Unova rumors do end up being true, I don't think it'll be a Legends game set in Unova, but I do love talking Legends, so I absolutely want to explore what a Legends game set in Unova could look like, and that's exactly what we're going to do. First, let's talk about the starters. Now, a big deal with Legends Arceus was that they gave us past starters, but not Chimchar, Turtwig, and Piplup, but rather starters from different regions. Cyndaquil from Johto, Oshawott from Unova, and Rowlet from Alola. And then, when these starters reached their final forms, they had new regional variants for these forms. So instead of the generic Typhlosion, Samurott, and Decidueye, we got Hisuian Typhlosion, Hisuian Samurott, and Hisuian Decidueye. So I would hope a Legends Unova game would follow suit with this and give us returning starters from different regions that would eventually have a new final form. Now, with the Unova games, Black and White and Black 2 and White 2, as well as just Generation 9 as a whole, having very heavy past and future themes, I thought it would be really cool to have these three starters represent the past, the present, and the future, one for each respectively, in a similar way to how the Hisuian starters actually represent what happens when you introduce a foreign species into a new environment. I've done a whole theory video on that you can check out explaining how these represent that, but yeah. So first, let's start with the past. I think that the best representation for the past would be the grass type. The grass type is usually very heavily associated with nature, and so that just kind of brings to mind, to my mind at least, very traditionalist themes. I think that Turtwig would be an excellent candidate for Legends Kyurem's grass starter. I think that it would be an amazing choice to start with Turtwig. I love Turtwig so much. And then perhaps we could see Torterra gain the grass psychic type with maybe some connections to Zen Gardens, and perhaps they could even redesign the top of Torterra's shell to kind of better represent Central Park in New York to further drive home the New York City themes that are in Unova, as Unova is based off of New York. Now, with the grass psychic type, Torterra would be literally spiritually connected to nature. I could see Dex entries talking about how it uses its psychic powers to purify water and to purify the air and just protect forests and meadows and nature in general. So Torterra would literally represent the past here, as it is constantly trying to keep things the way they were, rather than letting the rapid civilization and industrialization of Unova take over nature. In short, Torterra just wants things the way they were and have always been, and in his opinion, should always be. Now, to best represent the present, I think that the water type is an excellent choice, as, you know, water is always moving. Tides are rising and falling. Rivers are, you know, always going downstream. They've always got their currents and stuff. So water isn't afraid to change. It's not stuck in its ways like grumpy old Torterra. So I think a really good Pokemon that would represent this would be a more modern, or in the present, starter that we've seen, specifically Sobble from the Galar region. Now, we know that Sobble becomes a secret agent when it evolves into Inteleon, and I think it would be cool to take this, and instead let's put a spin on it where instead of being a secret agent, Inteleon could now represent like a police officer or perhaps even like a security guard. This would have Inteleon working very closely with people. So unlike grumpy old Torterra, Inteleon is embracing that people are, you know, starting to populate the Unova region and are growing in population. It has become kind of one with these humans. It has fully embraced that. You know, people even would use Inteleon for protection of, you know, maybe just personal security, but also maybe even have them out protecting big parades or stuff. We know Castelia does big parades. Maybe they started this in the past, and Inteleon would be there for that. People love this Pokemon and use it regularly. They're one with this Pokemon. It is truly caught up in the present. Now, because of this whole security guard and police officer themes, I think that Inteleon could get a lot bulkier and maybe have some changes to its stats to make it a more bulky Intellion, like in the way it works, and it could be a water fighting type. Now, the bulk would also help to diversify it from Quaquaval a good bit, so instead of being a speedy mon like the Intellion we know today, it would be a bulky water fighting Intellion. Lastly, there's the fire type. We've seen many industrial looking fire type Pokemon over the years. You know, we have Colossal, we have Torkoal, even Heatran. You can make some arguments there that it's very industrial looking. So I think that the fire type would be a really good representation for the future, kind of the fear of machines taking over, you know, Skynet dystopian type futures. They always look very industrial, so that's kind of what I'm going for here. I think a great fire type to pick for this would be Litten from the Alola region. Litten is a cat Pokemon, and cats are often, at least in a lot of forms of media, depicted as living in like little alleyways and shipyards and industrial areas and cartoons and stuff. So I think that would be cool to have Litten doing this. And then as it evolves into Incineroar, it gains the Fire Steel typing. It's now adapted to the scrap metal and is even kind of wearing it as an armor. If you look at Incineroar, it has like, you know, a very I guess it's very clear that it has like a chest and abs and all. You could perhaps replace that with body armor from scrap metal. Maybe even its belt is now a scrap metal belt. So I would still keep the fire in the middle just to drive home the fire typing, and then perhaps Incineroar would get a more rusty coloring. This, I think, would really, really represent the future very well, as it is literally almost like metal machinery has taken over Incineroar. And then also I think Incineroar is a great choice because Litten and Torracat are two quadruped, just kitty Pokemon, but when they evolve into Incineroar, well, now they are bipedal, so it shows a rapid form of evolution. It shows a rapid change, like the future. So there's my pick for our starters. Now, the more astute of you may be wondering why I talked about cities and civilizations and people working with Pokemon in this game. Like, why is that? Because in Legends Arceus, this wasn't the case at all. Legends Arceus had very few little civilizations. It really just had 2 camps in Jubilife Village, and people were terrified of Pokemon. And while that is definitely true, and Legends Kyurem would still be set in the past, I think that this would be a great opportunity to show that every region is different. You know, I think that, yeah, in Hisui, people were scared of Pokemon, and in Legends Kyurem and this old Unova region, that wasn't the case. They had already embraced Pokemon. I also think it would be kind of poetic, you know, a big theme across all Pokemon games are being one with your Pokemon, working together with your Pokemon, and how we and Pokemon should get along and respect each other and all that stuff. And that's even a really big theme in the Unova games, what with Team Plasma saying that they want to liberate Pokemon from people. I think that that would be cool to kind of show. It would be very poetic to show that since the people of Unova had already embraced these Pokemon, they had been able to develop faster. So Unova literally developed faster because people in Pokemon were already one, unlike Hisui that was a lot farther behind. And this is just true to the real world too. I mean, some countries develop faster than other countries. Now, just to be clear though, I don't think this will be a one-to-one Unova. I imagine that some more advanced cities like Nimbasa or Mistralton, I imagine they all would not exist at this time, and then even some other changes would be here as well, which is what we'll now get into. Off the top of my head, the way I'd work this is have Castelia City be more of like a colonial era port city, but still be the biggest city in the region, still be kind of the capital of Unova, if you will. And then you could have Driftvale just be like a little mining colony instead of, you know, a big expansive town. And then Opelucid City, I think it would be cool if that's more of just like a sacred little dragon village. This would be a cool reference to Iris's backstory in the anime, as well as just creating some potential ties to the dragon tamers of Johto or the Draconids from Hoenn. You know, I love when they connect some dots like that across different regions, so I'm all for that. Make Opelucid a little dragon city, or village rather. Some other changes in this region could include there being a train that travels around the Unova region, perhaps even run by a man named Ingo, who came here from the Hisui region after he started getting memories back about the region that he once called home. There's even some evidence for there being a train in Unova, as if you look in modern-day Nakreen City, you can see some evidence that there once was a train that ran through here. So it would be cool to kind of, pay that off by having a train actually traveling around the Unova region. And again, I think it would be really cool if it was controlled by Ingo. And then some other things could be in play here, like the desert resort's ruins still being a little more intact. They're a little more explorable than they are in Black and White and Black 2 and White 2. Now let's talk about the plot. It'd be easy to go, well, this is Legends Unova, so we have to do the story of the original dragon and it splitting, and we can play as one of the brothers. But since that's a story that kind of we already know how it went, I think that we should do a different story. The Legends Arceus story was a brand new story we hadn't experienced. So I think it would be cool if here in this Legends Kyurem game, we actually played as a story that perhaps was lost to time or intentionally kept a secret. I think it would be a really cool twist to find out that there was someone in between the brothers and the protagonists of Black and White and N who had access to Zekrom and Reshiram. Perhaps this could even, being Legends Kyurem, take place shortly after the Giant Chasm's formation. Maybe what's going on is ever since the Giant Chasm's formation, there has been a decrease in temperature in Unova. Maybe some technology is not working from it. This would all be due to the presence of Kyurem. Maybe you and a rival character who, I think it would be really cool if this rival character is an ancestor to Getsus, but still a good character, kind of go into this chasm, but are pulled out by the Dragon Village clan that, occupy what would be the past Opelucid City, and they basically tell you, hey, you're not going to be able to take on that dragon. To take on that dragon, you're going to need one of the two dragons from the mythos of Unova. Now, the big issue here is that there's Zekrom and Reshiram. How do we know which one we're going to get access to? Because normally, I can just pick Pokemon Black, and I know I'm getting Reshiram. Or I can pick Pokemon White, and I know I'm getting Zekrom. But this would be Legends Kyurem, so it will be one game. So I think what would be really cool is if maybe the way you do things in the story, like at the beginning up until this point, impacts which dragon you get. Or, to simplify it, maybe even when you first meet the Dragon Clan, you are asked questions by their leader, to kind of see if you're worthy, and based on your answers, it decides if you're more for ideals or more for dreams, and thus, if you are going to wind up getting Zekrom or Reshiram, and of course your rival would kind of always choose the opposite response as you. So the game would then proceed with you trying to find Zekrom or Reshiram, as well as completing little trials set up by the Dragon Village across the Unova region to further test your worthiness. Now we've got to talk about characters. That was a big deal in Legends Arceus, was that we got to see, ancestors to modern day characters that we already knew, which was just super cool and kind of provided some family history to these characters. It was a lot of fun, and I'd want to see it again. Already, we've talked about the return of Ingo, and we've talked about a potential Getsus ancestor, but let's go even further. I think it would be really neat to have the leader of this little dragon village be an ancestor to Iris, and perhaps they have like an assistant or a second-in-command, right-hand man, whatever you want to call it, that's an ancestor to Drayden. I think this would be a really fun role reversal because, in the present day, Drayden is the mentor to Iris, and you'd be swapping those roles, which I think, again, would be really, really cool. Obviously, an ancestor to Professor Juniper is also mandatory. I think they could maybe have Leon from Pokemon Legends Arceus come back. He moves to the Unova region after hearing about this mining colony in Driftvale, because he is an ancestor to Clay. It also would be a good way for, him to come in and give us the item that evolves Scyther into Cleavor, so then we have access to use Cleavor in the playthrough story of this game. Just a small idea that I think could be a lot of fun. Maybe he came with Ingo. They're both part of the Pearl clan. But then also, we gotta talk about other kinds of characters that could appear. One thing I loved about Legends Arceus was that it gave us ancestors to characters that were not from Sinnoh, and people like Professor Laventon or Tauhua or Leon, like I had mentioned. So let's keep this trend going. The first one I'd like to see is an ancestor to Looker, which honestly I was really upset that we did not get in Pokemon Legends Arceus. Perhaps this guy's like a local cop in Castelia City and maybe is partnered with a Intellion, but of the Unovan kind that we had discussed earlier. I think also it would be cool to maybe have a character that shows a relationship between two characters. Off the top of my head, a good one would be maybe Alessa and Iono from Paldea, because they are two, you know, flashy electric type gym leaders. Maybe there's a character that shows that there's a relationship there, similar to how they gave us, I believe, Charm, who was an ancestor to both Bertha and Agatha. And I'm sure in this Legends Unova game, there would be a character who is an ancestor to a character that we have not seen yet, in a similar way to how Legends Arceus gave us Tauhua, who ended up being an ancestor to Director Clavel from Scarlet and Violet, which had not yet been released. As for Pokemon in this Legends Kyurem game, we can kind of get an idea of what they'd maybe be like by looking at Legends Arceus. Legends Arceus did not touch any Sinnohmon. It didn't touch any Gym 4 Pokemon. It even went out of its way to give Hisuian Sneasel a brand new evolution instead of giving it a Hisuian Weavile evolution. So I'd imagine a Legends game set in Unova would follow the same suit here and not give any love to Gym 5 Pokemon, which does pain me because Druddigon needs something. He's so cool and he needs something, but that's a whole nother rant. I've talked about it in past videos about how one thing I'd love to see is a Noctowl evolution in this game. This could perhaps be the Flying Rhydamon, and it would be cool to kind of have a Noctowl in this game that can not only see through the illusions of ghost types, but also can see through the illusion of a very popular and scary Unova Pokemon called Zoroark. And then the really neat thing about this would be that you could give Noctowl a new typing. You know, maybe it would be Fighting Flying or Fairy Flying to be able to defeat Zoroark, because, you know, that's super effective against dark types. But I would settle for it just getting the Psychic typing or the Ghost typing, so becoming Psychic Flying or Ghost Flying, and getting the ability justified or some kind of thing to kind of make it counter Zoroark. I think that would be super cool. Then we could maybe even see a Dragapult variant that is a water dragon and is the original form of Dragapult, in a similar way to how we got the original form of Goodra and Hisuian Goodra in Legends Arceus. We could also maybe see a Fireground Turtonator that is kind of used by the miners in the Driftvale mining colony. Then we could maybe even see an evolution of Gramble that's fairy fighting, that kind of represents those cartoon, you know, dogs you always see that are like fighting in the alleyway and they're like really mean and gruff and tough. You know, I know it's like stereotypical or whatever, but I think it will be pretty cool. And then some other less fleshed out ideas I have are maybe a water electric Mantine based off of a Stingray. And then you could also do a Dragon Fairy Altaria with like cotton candy wings. And this would kind of serve as maybe a little explainer for why Altaria gave the fairy typing when it evolved. So, you know, I don't know. I like when they do things like that, but again, haven't thought long and hard about those. But yeah, there you have it. That is how I would pull off a Pokemon Legends game set in Unova. Again, I would call this game Legends Kyurem, but I know that there are some great ideas about Legends Victini, Meloetta, Keldeo, Genesect. There's the original dragon. There's so many cool ideas with this. Legends really is a great game, and again, I don't think that we will be seeing it next year, but I do hope that we will one day get Legends games again in the future, because they were great. You know, there's some improvements to be made for sure, but I personally love them. Let me know what you thought of them in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss all our future videos. Until next time, see all of you later.